The massive alien vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere, its metallic hull gleaming in the morning sun. Inside the United Nations headquarters in New York, Captain James Miller stood at attention, his weathered face betraying no emotion as the alien representatives of the Galactic Council filed into the conference room. The aliens were tall, their bodies covered in what appeared to be living metal. Their eyes glowed with an inner light that spoke of technological advancement far beyond human understanding. The lead representative, who called himself High Commander, took his seat at the head of the table. "Humans," the High Commander's voice resonated through the translator. "We have observed your civilization for some time now. Your recent achievements in faster-than-light travel have qualified you for consideration into the Galactic Council." Miller watched as other military representatives from various Earth nations shifted in their seats. This was humanity's big moment. First contact and a potential alliance with an advanced alien civilization. However, the High Commander continued, his metallic features twisting into what might have been a smile. "We must evaluate your military capabilities. All member species must contribute to the collective defense of Council space." One of the alien delegates, a shorter being with silver-blue plating, activated a holographic display. Images of various human weapons, rifles, tanks, artillery pieces, and naval vessels floated in the air. "These are your primary weapons?" another delegate asked, making a sound that the translator interpreted as laughter. "You still rely on chemical propulsion, on projectiles." Miller remained silent, but his hand instinctively touched the pistol at his hip. 20 years in the military had taught him that sometimes the simplest solutions were the most effective. The High Commander gestured to the holographic display, showing their own weapons, sleek, energy-based devices that seemed to bend light itself. "Our civilizations have moved beyond such primitive methods. We harness the power of stars themselves for our weapons. Your bullets and shells would be useless against even our most basic shielding technology." The human representatives glanced at each other uncertainly. Admiral Peters from the United States Navy cleared his throat. "Perhaps a demonstration would be in order, to properly assess our capabilities." The alien delegates exchanged amused looks. The High Commander's eyes pulsed brighter. "Yes, a demonstration. We will arrange it immediately. Though I must warn you, your prehistoric weapons might damage our opinion of Earth's readiness for Council membership." Miller finally spoke up, his voice calm and steady. "With respect, High Commander, we would be honored to demonstrate our capabilities. Might I suggest we use your most basic shield technologies for the test? We wouldn't want to risk damaging your more advanced systems." The sarcasm in his voice was subtle, but the High Commander missed it entirely. "Of course, we wouldn't want to embarrass you completely. Our basic shields will be more than sufficient." As the meeting concluded and arrangements were made for the demonstration, Miller stayed behind, studying the holographic images of the alien weapons. Another delegate approached him, this one with copper-colored plating. "Your kind still uses projectile weapons because you haven't discovered how to properly harness energy, correct?" the alien asked, its tone condescending. Miller smiled slightly. "Actually, we understand energy weapons quite well. We've developed several prototypes ourselves." "Then why persist with such obsolete technology?" "Sometimes the old ways work best," Miller replied. "There's a saying on Earth, if it ain't broke, don't fix it." The delegate's translator took a moment to process this, but the alien merely shook its head and walked away. Later that evening, as Miller sat in his office reviewing the meeting notes, his phone rang. It was General Richards, the head of Earth's United Defense Force. "They took the bait," Miller reported. "They think we're primitives with pop guns." The general's laugh crackled through the speaker. "Perfect. They have no idea that we've been advancing our kinetic weapons specifically because energy shields were the most likely form of defense we'd encounter in space." "Their arrogance will work in our favor," Miller agreed. "They're so convinced of their superiority that they've forgotten the basic laws of physics. Mass times velocity is still mass times velocity, no matter how fancy your energy shield is." Assemble your team, Captain. Let's show these aliens why humanity never abandoned the tried and true method of throwing very fast objects at our problems. Miller ended the call and looked out his window at the alien ship hovering above New York. Soon, very soon, the Galactic Council would learn why humans had stuck with their primitive weapons. He almost felt sorry for them. Almost. The challenge was set for dawn the next day. The alien representatives had chosen a remote location in the Nevada desert, far from civilian populations. Their massive ships hung in the morning sky like metallic clouds, casting long shadows across the sand. Captain Miller watched as his team set up their equipment. The aliens had provided 3 test targets, basic shield generators that they claimed could withstand anything short of a star's energy output. Each target was protected by what the High Commander called simple civilian-grade defensive barriers. Such barriers, the High Commander had explained with obvious amusement, are what we use to protect our children's schools. Surely they will be more than adequate for this demonstration. Miller's team included the best from every branch of Earth's military. They had brought a carefully selected array of weapons: a standard M1 F5 tank, several artillery pieces, a railgun prototype, and various small arms. Each weapon represented decades of human innovation in the art of making things go very fast. The alien observers sat in what looked like floating bleachers, protected by their own shield technology. They chatted among themselves, occasionally pointing and laughing at the human preparations. Their translator devices carried snippets of their conversations across the desert air. Look at them, still using wheeled vehicles. Is that copper in their ammunition? How quaint. They'll be throwing rocks next. Lieutenant Tom Baker, Miller's second in command, approached with a tablet showing their final preparations. Sir, all weapons are in position. The tank crew reports ready, artillery is loaded, and the rail gun is powered up. Miller nodded, his eyes fixed on the alien shields. They hummed with a slight blue tinge, barely visible in the morning light. Any readings on those barriers? Energy output is massive, sir, Baker replied. They're definitely not lying about the power behind those shields. But, he grinned, they're all focused on stopping energy-based attacks. There's nothing in their field pattern designed to handle good old-fashioned kinetic energy. A High Commander floated down from the observation area, his metallic skin gleaming. Captain Miller, we are ready to begin. Though I must warn you, this demonstration may be rather short. Several other delegates chuckled at this. Miller maintained his professional demeanor. Thank you, High Commander. We'll start with our smallest weapons and work our way up, if that's acceptable. Of course. Please, embarrass yourselves in whatever order you prefer. Miller turned to his team and nodded. The first phase began. A sniper team set up their position, using what appeared to be a standard long-range rifle. The aliens actually started recording with their devices, clearly intending to use this as entertainment later. First target locked. The sniper reported through the radio. Permission to fire. Granted, Miller replied. The rifle cracked. The sound echoed across the desert. Through his binoculars, Miller watched as the aliens leaned forward, expecting the round to splash harmlessly against their shield. Instead, the depleted uranium round, traveling at 4 times the speed of sound, passed through the shield as if it wasn't there. It struck the target behind it, causing a spectacular explosion. Silence fell over the testing ground. Impossible. The High Commander's translator crackled with static from his agitation. That shield should have. Next weapon, Miller commanded, ignoring the commotion. The tank rolled forward. Its main gun elevated slightly. The aliens were still sputtering protests when it fired. The round, a specialized kinetic penetrator, not only went through the second shield, but destroyed the generator and created a crater 10 meters deep behind it. Now the alien observers were standing, their metallic skin shifting colors in what Miller assumed was distress. The High Commander's eyes were pulsing rapidly. Stop. You must stop this at once. This is not possible. Miller held up his hand, and his team paused. Is there a problem, High Commander? We still have the artillery and the railgun to demonstrate. Those shields, they are designed to stop weapons of war. The most advanced energy weapons in the galaxy cannot penetrate them. Yes, Miller agreed. They're very good at stopping energy weapons. But we don't use energy weapons. We use physics. Would you like to see what our railgun can do, or have you seen enough? The High Commander looked at the two destroyed targets, then at the human weapons, then back at his fellow delegates. For the first time since their arrival, the aliens seemed to be taking humanity very, very seriously. After the initial demonstration, the Galactic Council demanded a more comprehensive test. They set up a massive proving ground in the Australian outback, complete with their most advanced civilian shield systems. This time, they weren't taking any chances, or so they thought. Miller's team worked through the night, setting up their equipment under the watchful eyes of the alien observers. The human soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, their actions precise and purposeful. Even the aliens had to admire their discipline, though they still scoffed at the primitive weapons being deployed. Your weapons may have penetrated our basic shields, the High Commander admitted, but these barriers are different. They're designed to protect our most valuable civilian installations. Miller watched as his artillery crews calibrated their guns. In the distance, the alien shields shimmered like heat waves, protecting a series of targets that mimicked alien civilian structures. The targets were arranged in a complex pattern, meant to simulate a small settlement. Lieutenant Baker approached, carrying new intelligence reports. Sir, our scanners show they've layered the shields this time. 3 separate barriers, each operating on a different energy frequency. They're learning, Miller nodded, but they still don't understand the basic problem. The alien observers had constructed an elaborate observation bunker, protected by what they called military-grade shields. They weren't taking chances after seeing their basic shields fail. The High Commander stood at the bunker's entrance, his metallic skin reflecting the rising sun. We have studied your previous demonstration, he announced. These new shields are modulated specifically to detect and deflect any high-velocity objects. They will create an energy field that will slow your projectiles to a harmless speed. Miller's radio crackled. Sir, artillery is ready. All guns laid and loaded. Railgun team reporting in. Power systems at full charge. Tank platoon in position. The High Commander gestured at the target area. You may begin whenever you're ready to accept defeat. Miller turned to his command team. Let's show them what a coordinated barrage looks like. Artillery first, then tanks, with the railgun targeting any shield still standing. The morning calm was shattered by the thunder of artillery. The guns fired in sequence, each shell carefully timed. The aliens watched confidently as the first shells approached their shields. The shells didn't slow down. Instead, they began to spin faster, their specially designed casings creating the drill-like effect. As they struck the first shield layer, they corkscrewed through the energy field, their kinetic energy actually increasing due to the shield's attempt to slow them. The explosions were spectacular. Before the dust could settle, the tanks opened fire. Their rounds, designed specifically for this demonstration, carried a payload of specialized materials that became superheated by the shield's energy. Instead of being stopped, they used the shield's own power to become even more destructive. In the observation bunker, the aliens were frantically checking their readings. Impossible. They're using our shield energy against us. The kinetic force is being amplified, not reduced. Miller allowed himself a small smile as he watched their reaction. Railgun team, you're up. Target the remaining shields. The railgun's distinctive whine filled the air. When it fired, the projectile moved so fast it left a visible distortion in the air. It hit the remaining shield with such force that the energy barrier shattered like glass, something the aliens had insisted was physically impossible. The High Commander emerged from the bunker, his metallic skin now a pale shade of what might have been fear. How did you know to design weapons that could do this? Miller walked over to him, his boots crunching on the desert sand. "We didn't design these weapons to fight you specifically. We designed them because, throughout human history, whenever someone created a supposedly impenetrable defense, someone else found a way through it. We learned to focus on the fundamentals: mass, velocity, and energy transfer." He gestured at the devastated target area. "Your shields are incredible technology, but they're designed to fight energy weapons. We never developed energy weapons because we found something better: ways to throw heavy objects very, very fast." The High Commander looked at the destruction, then back at Miller. Perhaps we should discuss modifying our military doctrine." Miller nodded. "That would be wise. But first, would you like to see what else we can do? We haven't even shown you our orbital kinetic strike platforms yet." The aliens' collective shudder was all the answer he needed. The Galactic Council called an emergency session on their flagship hovering above Earth's atmosphere. Representatives from 100 alien civilizations gathered to witness what they called the human weapons demonstration. This time, they had prepared their most advanced military shields. Miller and his team had been transported to a massive arena-like structure within the flagship. The ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadows, and the walls seemed to stretch for kilometers. At one end stood their array of human weapons, looking almost toy-like in the vast alien space. "These shields," the High Commander announced, his voice echoing through the chamber, "are what we use to protect our warships. They have withstood direct hits from solar flares. No known weapon has ever penetrated them." The target area was impressive: a series of layered defense systems protecting a replica of a Council warship's bridge. The shields rippled with colors that human eyes had never seen before, powered by what the aliens claimed was the energy of a small star. "Just to be clear," Miller said, addressing the assembled Council, "you want us to try to breach those shields?" "Yes," the High Commander replied, though his confidence seemed somewhat diminished after their previous demonstrations. "Show us your best attempt." Miller turned to his team. They had brought something special for this demonstration: weapons that hadn't been revealed in the previous tests. The aliens murmured among themselves as human soldiers wheeled out what looked like an oversized cannon. "What is that primitive device?" one delegate asked. "This." Miller patted the weapon. "This is something we call a mass accelerator. It's based on some very old Earth science, just simplified and scaled up a bit." The alien observers settled into their protected viewing areas, their barriers humming with power. Despite their previous experiences, many still wore expressions of smug superiority. "Begin when ready," the High Commander commanded. Miller nodded to his crew. The mass accelerator began to power up, its capacitors charging with a deep, resonant hum. The aliens leaned forward, their scanning devices ready to record what they assumed would be another futile human attempt. "Target locked," the weapon operator reported. "Firing solution calculated." "Fire," Miller ordered. The mass accelerator launched its projectile, a specially designed tungsten rod that moved at a significant fraction of light speed. The air in its path didn't just part, it exploded into plasma. The first shield layer didn't just fail, it shattered. The second layer collapsed immediately after. The third layer, supposedly the strongest, lasted for precisely 1 microsecond before the projectile tore through it like tissue paper. The target behind the shields didn't just explode. It ceased to exist, converted into its component atoms by the sheer kinetic force of the impact. The silence that followed was absolute. What was that?" The High Commander's voice shook. Miller walked to the center of the chamber. "That was roughly the same amount of energy as a small nuclear weapon delivered in an area the size of my thumb. No radiation, no fallout, just pure kinetic energy." The council chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates were shouting, some in fear, others in disbelief. The High Commander raised his hands for silence. "How is this possible? Your civilization is barely space-capable." "True," Miller agreed, "but we've been fighting wars for thousands of years. We understand violence, and we understand physics. Your civilizations focused on energy weapons because they were cleaner, more advanced. We focused on kinetic weapons because they work. Always have, always will. A new delegate stepped forward, their metallic skin shifting in patterns that suggested deep thought. You're saying you could have built energy weapons, but chose not to. Exactly, Miller confirmed. Why build complicated energy weapons when you can achieve the same result by throwing something really hard? No shield can ignore mass and velocity. They're fundamental properties of the universe. The High Commander approached Miller, his previous condescension replaced with something that looked like respect. It seems we have greatly underestimated humanity's military capabilities, and perhaps overestimated our own defenses. Miller nodded. Would you like to see our other weapons? We haven't even shown you our experimental gravity manipulation projectiles yet. The chamber fell silent again, but this time it was a different kind of silence. The silence of a galaxy realizing that humanity wasn't just another primitive species joining their ranks. They were something far more dangerous. Innovators who understood that sometimes the simplest solution was the best one. The Galactic Council's flagship wasn't just a ship, it was a symbol of their technological superiority. At least it had been until today. Now, as Miller and his team prepared for their final demonstration, that superiority was crumbling faster than their supposedly impenetrable shields. One last test, the High Commander announced, though his voice had lost its condescending tone. Our most advanced combat simulation. If you can breach these defenses, humanity will have proven itself beyond any doubt. The massive chamber transformed around them. Holographic projectors created a battlefield environment complete with atmospheric conditions and gravitational anomalies. The target this time was different, a full-scale replica of their most advanced battle station. This station, a council scientist explained, has defenses based on technologies from all our member species, multiple overlapping shields, gravity distortion fields, and temporal displacement barriers. Miller studied the target thoughtfully. Temporal displacement. You're bending time itself as a defense. Yes, the scientist said proudly. Any attack will be shifted milliseconds into the past or future, making it impossible to hit the target in the present moment. Miller turned to Lieutenant Baker. Get the prototype ready. The human soldiers wheeled out a device that looked deceptively simple, a sleek black tube mounted on a mobile platform. The aliens muttered among themselves, clearly unimpressed by its appearance. What is this device? The High Commander asked. We call it the Multi-Phase Kinetic Delivery System, Miller explained, or as my troops prefer to call it, the Time Puncher. Before the aliens could respond, Miller's team began the firing sequence. The weapon hummed to life, but instead of a single projectile, it fired a stream of microscopic particles. Each particle was timed to arrive at the target at slightly different moments, creating a continuous stream of impacts across multiple instances of time. The temporal barrier, designed to shift attacks through time, couldn't cope with an attack that already existed across multiple temporal planes. The shield overloaded, creating a cascade failure that rippled through the station's other defenses. The battle station's replica didn't just fall. It imploded, crushed by the very gravitational fields it had been using for protection. Stop. Stop the demonstration. The High Commander's voice cracked with something close to panic. How did you counter temporal mechanics with a kinetic weapon? Miller walked over to the smoking remains of the target. Simple. You tried to dodge our attack through time, so we attacked through all relevant timeframes simultaneously. Basic problem solving, really. A new delegate, one who hadn't spoken before, approached Miller. You developed temporal attack capabilities just for this demonstration. No, Miller replied. We developed it years ago when our scientists theorized that advanced aliens might use time manipulation as a defense. We believe in being prepared. The council chamber erupted in urgent discussions. The High Commander conferred with his advisors, their metallic skin shifting through various colors of distress. Finally, the High Commander addressed the assembly. In all our history, no species has ever approached warfare quite like humans do. You take simple principles and apply them in ways we never considered possible. Miller nodded. That's because you all started with energy weapons and worked forward. We started with throwing rocks and worked our way up. We never lost sight of the basics. And these basics, as you call them, can defeat our most advanced defenses. Physics doesn't care how advanced your technology is, Miller explained. Mass times velocity equals force. Add enough mass, increase the velocity enough, and no amount of energy shielding will help. The council members looked at each other, a new understanding dawning in their glowing eyes. Their military doctrine, developed over thousands of years, had just been upended by what they had dismissed as a primitive species. Captain Miller, the High Commander, said formally, "I believe the Council needs to seriously reconsider humanity's role in galactic defense." Miller smiled slightly. "We'd be happy to share our expertise. After all, there's a lot more where this came from." The aliens' collective shudder at his words was now tinged with respect rather than dismissal. They had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate a species that had spent its entire history finding new and innovative ways to throw things at their problems. And humanity, it turned out, was very, very good at throwing things. In the aftermath of the demonstrations, the Galactic Council converted their flagship's main conference chamber into an impromptu classroom. Captain Miller stood before a vast holographic display, teaching advanced warfare concepts to beings who had previously thought themselves the masters of combat. "The fundamental problem with energy weapons," Miller explained, drawing diagrams in the air with a laser pointer, "is that they're predictable. Energy follows known patterns. It can be redirected, absorbed, or reflected. But mass—" He paused to pick up a small metal ball from his desk. "Mass just is." The alien delegates, once proud and dismissive, now took careful notes. Their recording devices captured every word as Miller continued his lesson. "Your shields were designed to handle energy weapons because that's what you expected to face. But the universe doesn't care what we expect. It only cares about physics." The High Commander raised his hand, a human gesture he had recently adopted. "But surely, Captain, there must be defenses against these kinetic weapons." Miller nodded. "Of course there are. Ironically, the best defense is often more mass. But you all went so far into energy-based technology that you forgot about the basics." He gestured to Lieutenant Baker, who activated a new hologram showing the evolution of human weapons, from stone axes to modern rail guns. "We never abandoned kinetic weapons because they kept working. Every time we tried to develop energy weapons, we found ourselves coming back to the same conclusion. Why complicate something that already works perfectly?" A council scientist stepped forward, their metallic skin shimmering with curiosity. "But the power requirements for your mass accelerators must be enormous." "Actually," Miller smiled, "they're quite efficient. Most of the energy goes directly into the projectile. With energy weapons, you lose power to heat, light, radiation, all sorts of waste energy. Our weapons put nearly everything into pure kinetic force." The hologram shifted to show the interior of a human kinetic weapon. The aliens leaned forward, their eyes glowing with intense interest. "See this?" Miller pointed to the power core. "It's not even particularly advanced technology. We just found better ways to use it. The real innovation is in the projectile design and timing systems." The High Commander stood, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Our entire defense doctrine, thousands of years of technological development, is still valuable," Miller interrupted. "Your energy weapons and shields aren't useless. They're just incomplete. You focused so much on advancing one type of technology that you forgot to look at alternatives." Baker brought out a case containing various human ammunition types. The aliens gathered around, examining each one with newfound respect. "This one," Miller held up a specialized round, "uses your own shield energy to increase its penetrating power. The faster your shields try to stop it, the more energy they feed into it. Basic physics. turned into a weapon. "And this is why humanity survived so long despite being less advanced?" asked one of the delegates. Miller shook his head. "We survived because we never stopped innovating. We didn't just climb the technology tree straight up. We explored every branch. Sometimes the best solutions aren't at the top of the tree. They're in the roots." The council members discussed among themselves, their translator devices carrying fragments of excited conversation through the chamber. "We need to redesign our entire defense network. Human kinetic principles could revolutionize our ship-to-ship combat. Their primitive approach, it's brilliant in its simplicity." The High Commander raised his hands for silence. "Captain Miller, humanity has shown us that our understanding of warfare was incomplete. Would your people be willing to help us integrate these principles into our own defenses?" Miller looked out at the assembled aliens, seeing not the arrogant beings who had first contacted Earth, but potential allies who had learned a valuable lesson in humility. "Of course," he replied. "That's another human principle. We're always happy to teach others how to throw things better." The chamber filled with what the translators interpreted as laughter, not mocking this time, but genuine appreciation. As Miller prepared for his next lesson, he couldn't help but smile. Who would have thought that humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization would be teaching advanced aliens how to throw rocks properly? 6 months after the demonstrations, Earth's orbital space had transformed. Alien ships no longer hovered with intimidating superiority. They docked alongside human vessels as equals. The Galactic Council had established its first-ever joint military academy in orbit, where species from across the galaxy came to learn what they now called human combat physics. Captain Miller, recently promoted to colonel, stood at the Academy's observation deck, watching Earth rotate below. The High Commander joined him, their relationship now one of mutual respect rather than condescension. "Your latest class of students is performing exceptionally well," the High Commander said, his metallic skin glowing with what Miller had learned was pride. "They've fully embraced the human approach to warfare." Miller nodded, watching a training exercise through the reinforced windows. Human instructors were teaching alien soldiers how to combine their advanced technology with basic kinetic principles. A group of cadets was practicing with a hybrid weapon system, human kinetic delivery methods powered by alien energy cores. "Integration is the key," Miller replied. "We never wanted to replace your technology, just enhance it. The best defense is one that uses every tool available." The training area below erupted in a controlled demonstration as cadets tested their new weapons against the latest generation of shields, barriers designed to handle both energy and kinetic attacks. The shields held, proving that defense could evolve alongside offense. The Council has officially recognized Earth as the leading authority on military innovation, the High Commander announced. Several member species have already begun retrofitting their fleets with human-designed weapon systems. A massive ship passed by the window, one of the new hybrid destroyers. It carried both traditional alien energy weapons and human-designed mass drivers. The vessel represented the perfect fusion of both civilization's military philosophy. "And the pirates?" Miller asked, referring to the raiders that had plagued Council space for centuries. The High Commander's skin rippled with satisfaction. "The first encounter with our new hybrid ships was decisive. They had no defense against weapons they couldn't detect with energy scanners. The raiding groups are surrendering en masse." Lieutenant Baker, now Major Baker, entered the observation deck with a datapad. "Sir, the latest test results are in. The combined kinetic energy delivery system exceeded all expectations. We're ready to begin full production." Miller took the pad, studying the results. The new weapon combined the raw power of kinetic impacts with the precision of alien energy targeting systems. It was a perfect symbol of what humanity had brought to the galaxy, not just new weapons, but new ways of thinking. "You know," the High Commander mused, "when we first discovered Earth, we thought we were reaching down to help a primitive species join galactic society. Instead, you reached up and showed us how much we still had to learn." Miller watched as another training class began below. Alien cadets worked alongside human instructors, learning principles that their civilizations had overlooked for millennia. "That's the thing about humans," Miller said. "We never assume we know everything. Every time we think we've mastered something, we look for ways to make it better." A holographic display activated, showing the latest defensive statistics from across Council space. Piracy was down 90%. Border incursions had dropped to near zero. The galaxy was safer than it had been in recorded history. "The Council has voted," the High Commander announced formally. "Earth is being granted a permanent seat on the Military Advisory Board. We need your perspective, your ability to see simple solutions to complex problems." Miller smiled. "We'll be happy to continue sharing our expertise, though I hope you're prepared for more surprises. We have entire research divisions working on new applications of old principles." The High Commander's translator crackled with what might have been a chuckle. "You humans never stop innovating, do you?" "Nope," Miller agreed. "Right now, we're working on something that combines gravity manipulation with kinetic delivery systems. We're calling it the Planet Cracker. Don't worry, it's just a defensive weapon." The High Commander's skin shifted to a paler shade. "Sometimes, Colonel Miller, you humans still manage to terrify me." "Good," Miller replied, watching Earth's sunset paint the observation deck in golden light. "A little healthy fear keeps everyone honest. That's another human principle we'll be happy to teach." Together, they watched as the next generation of galactic defenders trained below, learning that sometimes the simplest solution was still the best one, even in an age of advanced technology. The galaxy had laughed at human weapons, but now they were learning to use them, and that perhaps was humanity's greatest victory of all.